Hey everybody, today I will be reviewing Snow White. This was directed by Mark Webb. Yes, I saw this one so you guys don't have to. I couldn't resist just because I don't know if I've ever seen a movie have this kind of backlash before it was even released. We have staged premieres and journalists being banned from them, or scaled back premieres, whatever. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see more and more of those kind of trickle out of the woodwork. Whatever you do feel about it, the discourse is heated and you can't deny that, which is amusing to a degree, but I also think it says a lot symbolically, obviously, about the disconnect between Hollywood and its audiences from so many different angles. But then just comes the disdain for modern Disney and what it represents. So there's all kinds of different things. I think when you combine it all to a fever pitch, the whole thing kind of combusts. And I guess I was just curious what the final result would be. I know obviously it wasn't going to be nearly as juicy as all the behind the scenes stuff, but still it is interesting to me. I saw the original film from 1937 literally yesterday, right before I saw this film, and in hindsight, maybe that was a mistake. Man, even just like in the first 8-10 minutes of that original film, I thought to myself, nothing is ever going to top this or even come close to it. This is a near perfect depiction of a classic fairy tale. And I do think animation gives you a freedom, and it's more cinematic in a lot of ways than a depiction of live action could ever be, unless you had some really great filmmaker with a very particular point of view. But there's so much going on in that original film. It's enchanting and it's mystical in tone, but yet it also knows when it needs to become dark. It's very gothic and macabre at points. The themes are clear, concise, consistent. The humor lands. I think the songs all work, at least from my perspective. And I think nearly every animated sequence goes above and beyond to create that full-bodied experience. There are a couple areas where I think you could improve on it, beef it up if you want to just a little bit, particularly maybe in the climax section. But honestly, beyond that, I have very little to criticize. Which brings me to this new 2025 version, and what do I say about it? I'm sure you all want me to rip it to shreds and all of that, and I could and I will to a degree. But quite honestly, the film is so mediocre in its presentation that I don't think it's even worth that much of a heated discussion beyond the behind the scenes stuff. It's bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not the kind of bad where it's like we have to get our pitchforks out. It's a big budget musical, so obviously there are all kinds of moving parts to it, but here it's like all of the moving parts are resisting each other. It's another failed, tone-deaf attempt to reach audiences without having an inkling of self-awareness as to why these movies keep failing over and over in the first place. I'm trying to find something that is positive to say about this film, because even when you have a complete misfire, it's like a lot of talented people are accumulated to make these things come alive, but I can't think of much of anything that I like in this. None of the performances or none of the art direction, none of it sticks out. It all just kind of accumulates into like this thick cloud of like monotony, malaise, or something. What they tried to do here for this new one was completely rewrite the original tale, basically. So they're adding all of these like new plot elements and like backstory. Obviously, they always do that. And so there are naturally all of these added motivations, but it's rarely consistent. So as a result, you have all of these strange contradictions. And so the tone is often muddled and awkward. But again, it feels as though we are so spooked by like the mythos, the history behind some of these great pieces of art, such an iconic film like the original Snow White, that I feel like it's completely stifled us in the modern day so far as originality, creativity. This movie is kind of interesting in the construction of it, in the sense that it reminds me of like when you see some stunning old property, some historical house or something. It's like, wow, it's gorgeous. You don't want to touch it. But then of course somebody is going to buy it and they're going to want to renovate it. And in this case, yes, the renovation is completely wrong, and it's going to lead to maybe, yes, foundational issues or damage to the original property. And so it ends up ultimately being more disrespectful than anything. The result is like oil and water. It's like you have two different ideas that are clashing instead of serving each other. All of the padding in this movie, the explanations, the exposition, it is all so drawn out and so boring, and it's so lost in its own long-windedness that I feel like it's completely lost the simplicity of what it means to tell like a simple story. It lacks balls, it lacks passion. It's so afraid of hurting people's feelings, offending people, that it's completely starved of stakes. And it's weird because this film seems to reject the core themes of the original to such a degree that I just don't understand the point of it. It's like, why remake this particular tale? if you don't even like the original, it's like, how can you even begin to honor it? And just so you know, I'm not one of those people that feels like you can't modernize, update themes of a classic story. That is bound to happen over time. When you look at the original Snow White, the character, she's very fluttery and weak, a bit dated. So it's like, I don't mind if you want to make her maybe a little bit more interesting, give her a bit more of a personality, but it's more when you propagandize it to such a degree that I take issue with it. When you are shoving the themes down our throat and it's void of any intrigue or elegance or complexity. Again, it's boring to me. And I guess I just don't understand the cynicism or the problem with the original film. It's like it feels as if there's such a desperation to shield the children from gasp. The idea that Snow White as a character is meant to represent purity and femininity and youth. It's like, how dare they? And I do feel sad that over and over, particularly in these modern Disney movies, it's like, for young boys, they don't have a heroic male figure to look up to anymore the way that young girls do. The male lead in this movie, he's a klutz and he keeps getting captured and caught. And again, I don't know, this movie feels like a weird mishmash of like the original Snow White, if you stripped it of everything interesting, mixed with like a second-rate Frozen. And Snow White, of course, she's a Mary Sue archetype who kind of slays her way through this entire movie relatively unscathed until the end of it. Again, she has no flaws. She learns very little. It's a telegraphed arc. When she meets the dwarves, they don't resist her that much. They're not skeptical of her like they should be. It's like they instantly kind of welcome her. She's supposed to be a target, obviously, by the queen, but at the same time, she has to face her, take her down, so she's not afraid of anything. And Rachel Zegler, I kind of think that her performance kind of embodies the entire feeling of the movie. It's not a terrible performance. I think she's just more suited for Broadway. I think she has the voice for it, but she's not easing into this role. Everything does feel kind of, manufactured, rehearsed. Every princess face, every angelic face she has here, it's like she practiced it in the mirror right before they said action. She places a lot of her emotional tension in like her jaw, her chin, and her mouth. So there's like a lot of weird mouth and like lip action going on in her acting, which, if she continues in movies, I think she needs to tone that down. But I do think that the stage is more her calling. Having said all of that, I think Rachel probably gives the best performance in this film. It's a low bar. Gal Gadot, as an example, I thought she was particularly bad. And I remember questioning the casting of that right off the bat. She doesn't have the humor or the camp, the drama, I think, to revel in a villain role of this magnitude. I think you need to have like Norma Desmond levels of frenzy in the eyes. And, in the animated film, it's all there. I know she has that signature smirk that can bring a little bit of mischief, but, for me, she just doesn't seethe. And I don't think that her talents lie in this particular area. I don't think that she's a very versatile actress. But also the songs. God, let's talk about that, because you want to talk about oil and water. So what they're doing here is they're omitting songs that clearly they think are maybe too old-fashioned, whatever, and they're trying to replace them with like original, updated songs. Obviously, they're going to keep a few of the original catchy songs like Hi Ho, can't leave that one out. But the new songs in this film are dull. I mean, dull, and they go on and on and on, just dragging out the runtime of this thing for God knows what reason. Why would you get rid of a number like One Song? That takes place at the very beginning of the original movie. That's a gorgeous piece of music. It's haunting, and no, but their solution here is to change that into something that is more like modern poppy Broadway. It makes those new songs stick out like a sore thumb, and they completely contradict the old school music, which is from the 1937 film, which is far more mature, and there is like this weird vaudevillian kind of humor in it that is mixed with like Rodgers and Hammerstein style songwriting. Those songs feel like songs, and the score felt like a proper score, and they're not afraid of the minor chords. You know what I'm saying? And this one doesn't believe in risks, neither do the songs, so everything is so melodically basic. One of the things that really struck me about the original film is how much it plunges you into it. It's like, yes, it's a kid's movie, but it feels like a movie for adults. It's like it's taking these children seriously. It's putting them to the edge. It's scaring them a little bit, making them cry, delighting them. Movies like Bambi, those are important. They make an impression on a child because they show the light and the darkness. But in a movie like this live action remake of Snow White, where everything is just going up, 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 everything is just escalating where there are very few obstacles in the way, again, what is the point? You look at the colors and the aesthetic in the original film, and they're rich and they're bold and they're dark. But in this new film, everything is just so artificial and plastic in effect. It's almost like you told AI, like, make a Thomas Kincaid painting come to life. Sorry, but that's just not what I'm thinking about when I think about Snow White. I'm thinking more about, like, those old German fairy tales. I'm thinking about Hans Christian Andersen. Another thing that really bugs me about this film is that I think it's around, like, the budget is $250 to $270 million. And the result is the costuming, the lighting, the sets, everything is so cheap looking. It honestly reminds me of like one of those fairy tale straight to video releases like Cinderella in the 90s starring Brandy, or even a movie like Dungeons and Dragons in, like, I don't know, the year 2000. But at least those make sense. When you look at Cinderella in the 90s, that again, it was a direct to video release. We don't have millions and millions of dollars for a big budget movie like this. There's no excuse here. For instance, when Snow White meets the male lead character again in the movie and she's introduced to all of his friends, I swear they all look like bad Renaissance festival performers, actors, or like just a bunch of bohos that wandered out of like a local coffee shop in Portland. It's painful. The movie does become more political, especially when we go into the third act. There's a whole section tacked on there at the end. But also, as the film does become more political, it loses the core of what Snow White is inherently. It's hard to get behind a film when it feels like it's in complete contradiction with itself, and when it doesn't feel like it respects the original source material. This movie feels like, no, it's holier than thou, like it is talking down to the original material. This is a flop. It deserves to be. Do I think it deserves this level of backlash? No, but I don't think it should wriggle its way out so easily either. I hope a lesson can be learned. Like we can have a reflection and realize people hated this so much before it even came out. There's such a disconnect between Disney and the audiences. That should say something. And maybe you could show them. It's like, be like, we'll make a good movie and see how you feel about it. But no, they didn't do that. They doubled down on their delusions. Who knows if the revelation will ever occur, but I'm telling you, obviously, don't see this movie. That's why I am here. The only reason you would see a movie like this is if you have children. And if you have children, I wouldn't waste their time with this. You can just show them the original film. But yes, that is my review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website as always. It is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commissioned portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that is something you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to all the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.